The Red Sea shimmered under a relentless sun as the USS Mason, a guided missile destroyer of the Arleigh Burke class, cut through the calm waves like a steel arrow. Commander Jacob Reeve stood on the bridge, arms crossed, eyes locked on the horizon. Decades in the Navy had taught him to distrust calm seas, especially in these waters. Tensions had been rising for weeks, maybe months. Houthi rebel forces had grown bolder, emboldened by regional chaos and external backing. But today there were no alerts, no sirens, no signs, just the low hum of the ship's engine and the routine rhythm of duty. Below deck, Ensign Maria Ortega monitored the ship's electronic warfare systems. Fresh from the Naval Academy, and still adapting to the relentless pace of real-world deployments, she was sharp, inquisitive, and always alert. Her console flickered with data from satellite relays and electronic intercepts. Nothing significant, just the usual digital fog of distant chatter, radio fragments, and encrypted transmissions. But her instinct nudged her as she noticed a subtle signal spike near the Yemeni coastline. She leaned in, marking the anomaly. "Commander Reeve, I'm seeing an uptick in comms from Al Hudaydah," she reported, her voice steady but curious. "Could be background noise, or maybe they're gearing up for something." Reeve approached her station, scanning the data. "Tag it and run it through our filters. Let's not jump the gun. But good catch, Ensign." Miles away, in a makeshift underground command center near Sana'a, Houthi commander Jalal al-Mansour paced in a dimly lit room. Around him, operators tapped into Russian-provided targeting software and hastily assembled Iranian drones. The target was clear in their mind: a U.S. aircraft carrier reportedly in the vicinity. Taking it out, or even striking near it, would send a message. A message that the Houthis weren't just a ragtag militia. They were players, forceful ones. "Confirm the signature," Jalal said, pointing at a pixelated screen showing ship silhouettes. "That must be the carrier. Flat top, large heat signature, yes?" One of his techs nodded. "Matches the specs. Within range of our loitering munition." They launched without hesitation. 5 drones, custom-rigged for kamikaze strikes, buzzed into the sky, rising from the desert like steel vultures. Each bore a payload capable of breaching hull armor if it hit just right. Their operators, fueled by confidence and desperation, watched as the drones disappeared into the clouds. Locked on GPS coordinates they believed belonged to the pride of the USNavy. Back on the USS Mason, Ortega's screen suddenly bloomed with noise. "We've got multiple radar echoes, fast movers at low altitude," she shouted, already marking their trajectories. Reeve snapped into motion, the bridge crew responding with military precision honed by months at sea. "Set condition 1. Sound general quarters. Bring CIWS online and ready the counter-drone protocols." Alarms blared across the destroyer. Sailors scrambled into position. Phalanx guns began rotating with metallic growls. The threat was incoming fast. "It's not a drill," Reeve barked. "This is real, and it's not the carrier they're after, it's us." That realization slammed through the crew like a cold wave. The aircraft carrier, the centerpiece of the strike group, was miles away, well protected and out of immediate danger. The Mason, by contrast, was performing picket duty, alone, albeit armed to the teeth. Below deck, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Hill gritted his teeth as he secured his station. "Why the hell would they go for a destroyer?" he muttered. Reeve's eyes narrowed as he pieced it together. "They think we're the carrier." The air shimmered with tension. One drone appeared on the horizon, then another. The crew had seconds, maybe less. The Phalanx opened fire, vomiting a stream of depleted uranium rounds that shredded the first drone mid-air, sending it tumbling into the sea in a fiery spiral. Another was hit by a surface-to-air missile, detonating in a flash of light and sound. But 3 more remained, adjusting flight paths, probing for gaps in the defense. Ortega's hands flew over her console. They're using swarm tactics. The third one is diving, starboard side. Brace for impact, Reeve roared. The ship rocked violently as the third drone exploded just yards from the hull. Shrapnel rained down, peppering the deck but causing no major breaches. Below deck, a fire broke out in the supply hold, quickly doused by the ship's emergency systems. No fatalities, just minor injuries and rattled nerves. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. "Damage report?" Reeve called out. "Superficial, no structural compromise, all systems functional," Ortega confirmed. But no one relaxed. Reeve's mind raced. If the Houthis thought they'd hit a high-value target, what would their next move be? And more importantly, how would Central Command respond? Far away, in that same dim bunker in Yemen, Jalal and... His team erupted in celebration. Their screen lit up with confirmation. Explosion recorded at target coordinates. They didn't know the real identity of the vessel they hit, but they believed they had struck a U.S. aircraft carrier, or at least caused serious damage. Propaganda teams were already crafting statements, victory posters, glorious hashtags. They didn't yet know they had made a mistake. Not a small one, a catastrophic one, because the USS Mason was no easy prey, and the United States Navy had just been given a reason to strike back, with precision and fury. Reeve stared out at the horizon, fists clenched behind his back. "They hit the wrong ship," he said quietly to Ortega. She met his gaze, her voice low. "Then they'll learn what that costs." In that moment, across stormy seas and satellite relays, the fuse of retaliation was lit. Within hours, the Pentagon was pulsing with urgency. Satellite footage confirmed it wasn't a bluff. The USS Mason had been the target of a coordinated drone strike. Though the damage had been minimal, the symbolism cut deep. An American warship attacked with intent by a non-state militia with increasing regional influence. It wasn't just an error by the Houthis. It was a provocation, and provocations, especially against the U.S. Navy, demanded a response. Admiral Claire Rennick, commander of Naval Forces Central Command, paced before a tactical map lit in red and amber. Her eyes flicked over the drone trajectories, satellite snapshots, and after-action reports. "They thought they were hitting an aircraft carrier," she said. "Instead, they kicked a hornet's nest." Around her, officers exchanged glances. Some were eager, others cautious. But none disputed the gravity of the situation. "They're escalating," said Rear Admiral Patrick Monroe, pointing to fresh intel. "The frequency of drone launches has doubled in the last month. They're testing us." "They're not just testing," Rennick replied. "They're sending a message. Time to send one back." Meanwhile, aboard the USS Mason, Commander Jacob Reeve addressed his crew from the mess deck, the air tense but determined. "They picked the wrong fight," he said plainly. "And now the responsibility to respond isn't just with Washington, it's with us too. We show strength not just through firepower, but through resolve." The crew listened, heads nodding, knuckles white. There was no need to stoke anger. The strike had already done that. What they needed now was clarity and coordination. In the Gulf of Aden, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the very carrier the Houthis had hoped to hit, began to reposition under the protection of a full strike group. AWACS aircraft circled like vultures in the sky, while destroyers and cruisers formed a shifting perimeter. In the air, FA-18 Super Hornets took off and landed in continuous rhythm, scanning for further threats. Reeve liaised with the Eisenhower's Combat Intelligence Unit via secure satellite link. "We've got their drone signature," a naval intelligence officer informed him. "Unique emission patterns, slightly different GPS bounce, enough to track. Our analysts traced it back to a launch site outside Al-Hudaida." "That gives us a target," Reeve replied. "Affirmative. Orders from CENTCOM. Observe, confirm, and prepare for joint strike authorization. Retaliation is likely imminent. Back in Yemen, Houthi commander Jalal al-Mansour was already preparing for the next step. Believing their strike successful, the propaganda machine had shifted into high gear. Grainy footage of the explosion was aired on regional broadcasts, accompanied by slogans glorifying their hit on the American fleet. Jalal knew the truth might surface eventually, but in asymmetric warfare, perception was often more potent than precision. Still, there was unease in his camp. One of his engineers reported that the intercepted U.S. signals showed a destroyer had been hit, not a carrier. Jalal dismissed it. "They're trying to save face," he claimed. But the doubt lingered. That night, a drone, this time an American MQ-9 Reaper, soared silently over northern Yemen. Its infrared sensor mapped the terrain with clinical accuracy. The drone circled the suspected launch site like a ghost. Movement, signatures, confirmation. Authorization came before dawn. Operation Iron Echo. 2 Tomahawk missiles launched from the USS Mason, each guided with terrifying precision. Seconds later, the USS Philippine Sea followed with 3 more. The cruise missiles flew low over the Red Sea, hugging the terrain, invisible to most radar. They struck the Houthi base with surgical force, reducing the command center to a smoldering crater. The message was unmistakable. The United States had tracked, calculated, and answered. Jalal wasn't in the bunker when the missiles struck. He was en route to another location, but his convoy halted when the shockwave cracked the road beneath them. Flames lit the sky behind him. The myth of their victory dissolved in a haze of black smoke. On the USS Mason, there was no celebration, just confirmation. "Target neutralized," Ortega reported. "All 5 missiles on mark, 0 collateral." Reeves stared at the screen, jaw tight. Let's hope they understand that was restraint. But the real test was still ahead. Would the Houthis strike again? Would they escalate or back off? Hours later, Jalal addressed his remaining fighters via radio. His voice was subdued, but not broken. "We struck a ship of war," he said, "and in return, they struck the land that gave us strength. This is far from over." Commander Reeve received the intercepted speech, translated and parsed by naval intelligence. He handed the transcript to Ortega. She read it silently, then asked, "Does this mean they're backing down?" Reeve shook his head. "Number, it means they still don't know what we're capable of." As the Mason resumed its patrol under a sky veiled with drone surveillance and electronic countermeasures, its crew remained alert. What had begun as a mistaken strike had evolved into a deadly chess match of intent, reaction, and consequence. The sea was calm again, but no one aboard believed that would last. The wind over the Gulf churned steadily as the USS Mason cut through dark blue waters, its radar domes sweeping the horizon with unblinking vigilance. Tensions aboard had settled into a cold, focused rhythm. After the strike on the Houthi drone base, there had been no follow-up aggression, no sudden retaliation. But silence in this case wasn't peace. It was pressure. Waiting. Commander Jacob Reeves stood at the bridge, eyes fixed on the horizon. Each hour of quiet brought another layer of uncertainty. Were the Houthis planning a larger strike? Had they reached out to backers beyond Yemen? Or worse, were they baiting the U.S. into overextension? Behind him, Lieutenant Ortega monitored fresh intelligence relayed from the Eisenhower's Combat Information Center. "Sir, CENTCOM reports multiple encrypted communications between Houthi leadership and unknown signals traced back to Iranian naval networks. They're talking to someone, maybe seeking reinforcements." Reeves' brow tightened. The strategic implications shifted. This wasn't just about a drone. This wasn't even just about Yemen anymore. "Get me a secure line to Eisenhower Command. We need to loop in 7th Fleet analysts. If they're bringing Iran into this, even indirectly, we're looking at a regional flashpoint." While the U.S. commanders examined chessboard possibilities, halfway across the Arabian Peninsula, Jalal al-Mansur sat in a candlelit tunnel beneath a mountain in Sada. The missile strike had reduced one of their most valuable launch sites to ashes, and with it, a dozen trained operators. He had underestimated the American response. His advisors begged caution. "The U.S. knows it wasn't their carrier we hit," one said. "They chose not to flatten more than one base. That's restraint." Jalal, grim-faced, shook his head. "Restraint is a signal of opportunity. If we don't answer, we lose all leverage. They'll see us as weak." But not all of his council agreed. Younger fighters, those who had grown up on stories of resistance, had now seen what American precision truly looked like. The gleam of myth had dulled under the weight of reality. Back at sea, the USS Mason received a fresh tasking order: intercept and monitor a small fleet of fishing vessels behaving erratically off the Yemeni coast. Naval drones had detected unusual heat signatures, consistent with disguised mobile launchers. Commander Reeve deployed a Seahawk helicopter and launched 2 RHIB teams for visual recon. The mission was tense. Approaching civilian-looking vessels in contested waters always risked escalation. But rules of engagement were clear: verify, deter, and defend if necessary. As the RHIBs circled the boats, bullhorns echoed in Arabic, demanding compliance. One vessel, ragged and rusted, ignored all commands. Seconds later, Ortega's voice crackled over comms. "Heat spike detected starboard. Possible missile battery charging." Reeve didn't hesitate. "Engage countermeasures. Tell the Seahawk to disable the launcher." The Seahawk swooped in. A single burst of 30mm cannon fire erupted from its pod, precise and surgical. The boat's rear exploded in a fireball, scattering debris across the sea. The missile never launched. It was another close call, another warning that the Houthis were still willing to play with fire, even after their mistake. In the aftermath, Reeve walked the deck in silence, letting the salt wind clear his thoughts. The Mason had survived direct attack, responded with force, and thwarted another imminent strike. But none of it guaranteed peace. If anything, each incident revealed deeper layers of instability. He met with his senior officers in the command briefing room that evening. "They thought we wouldn't respond. We did. Then they tried again. We stopped them. But this won't end until they understand one thing. We're not just guarding hardware. We're protecting the credibility of everything our Navy stands for." Across the globe, in Washington, D.C., analysts compiled footage, radar data, and communications intercepts into a full dossier for the White House. The story was clear. The Houthis had attacked the wrong ship. The U.S. had responded with precision, and yet the danger lingered. Media reports began to shift. Outlets that initially speculated on a potential U.S. overreaction now reconsidered, citing the Masons' discipline and restraint. A single mistake by the Houthis had not only failed to break American presence, it had reinforced it. As Jalal reviewed global headlines, his fingers trembled. For all the effort, all the planning, the world now saw his movement not as bold, but reckless. Back on the USS Mason, Ortega stood beside Reeve as they watched the sun rise over calm waters. "Do you think they've learned anything?" she asked quietly. Reeve considered it. "They've learned we don't bluff, but whether that changes their next move, I don't know." A message came through from CENTCOM. The Mason was to continue patrol duty. Intelligence indicated the Red Sea corridor would remain high risk for the foreseeable future. Reeve folded the report and slipped it into his jacket. He looked out across the water, where yesterday's fire had faded and today's tension waited. The sea was still. The game wasn't over,